Today, we're going to talk about how you're ruining your players' fun by stealing their agency, and you might not even know that you're doing it. Hey mortals, is it a full moon tonight? I don't know who would even pay attention to that sort of thing. Welcome to Tabletop Sandbox, where we talk about all things TTRPG. I am definitely not a half-transformed werewolf, also known as Harrison Tarr. I play trumpet in a jazz band. I want you to ask yourself a question. Why do people play tabletop role-playing games rather than just reading a book or playing a video game? The answer is one simple word: agency. Unlike books, or even video games that claim to be open world, tabletop role-playing games offer true agency. You can literally do whatever you want, as long as your game master is cool. I know it sounds cheesy, but in these sorts of pen and paper games, imagination is the only limit. Or at least that's the way it should be. When game masters limit player agency, intentionally or unintentionally, it limits fun. Agency is why people come to these sorts of games, and if you take that away as a game master, or if you have it taken away from you as a player, you will find yourself having substantially less fun. No agency means that some of your choices as a player do not matter. And when your choices don't matter, when the things you do don't have meaningful effect on the story, how can you have fun? If you're limiting your player's agency, then that means none of their choices actually matter. If their choices don't matter, then how can they enjoy themselves? How can they feel like their characters are actually influencing the world? Now, to the GMs out there, I'm not saying your players should be able to do whatever they want. No, you cannot seduce the dragon. No, you cannot hand-wave the death of hundreds of civilians. Everything should make sense in the context of the world. Your setting should have internal consistency. Verisimilitude. Obstacles are what makes the game fun, so you should put them in front of your players. But if outcomes are predetermined, then your players are not players. They are just an audience. If that's the way you run your game, you should either change the way you run your game, or stop and write a book. I'm sure you have great stories to tell. Now, some of you GMs are out there saying,
I would never limit my player's agency. Why would I limit my player's agency?
I'll tell you why. You might not even be doing it intentionally. I myself am guilty of this. I've wanted to limit my players' agency many times. Why? Because I hate them. No, actually it's because I love drama, and I want drama to occur in my games. As a game master, we all want to give our players tense, dramatic moments that draw them into the story. We want to see that sparkle in their eye, see that they're truly engaged, see them furiously writing notes in their little journals. Here's an example of one time I really wanted to limit my players' agency in order to achieve excellent dramatic scenes. My players had come to a town ruled by a tyrannical psionic, though they didn't know he was a psionic yet. They had come to this city because Scorpion, the rogue, had heard that a woman from his order of assassins had come here, an order of assassins that had supposedly been wiped out except for him. His fellow assassin, Fatima, was actually revealed to be married to the captain of the corrupt city guard, called the Death Dog. The party managed to infiltrate a ball at the Black Palace, where they knew Fatima and the Death Dog would be, using forged noble credentials. Once there, they decided to split the party.
A DM's dream to cause pain and suffering.
Scorpion and Nova, the druid, managed to bribe some palace guards and infiltrate Fatima's private quarters. Once there, Nova cast the silence spell to block sound from exiting the door of the chamber and to deafen herself so that Scorpion and Fatima could have an intimate and private conversation. During this conversation, Fatima revealed that she had decided to marry the Death Dog in a move of self-preservation. She had become his wife and his pet assassin, responsible for mysterious deaths happening in the city, because it was the only way that she knew how to survive. She admitted to Scorpion that she was not herself. She was mentally broken. She was still under the Death Dog's control. And with that, she plunged 2 poison darts into his thighs. He didn't die immediately. No, she had plenty of time to explain to him that he had an hour left to live. And she gave him the opportunity to end her life in revenge. A tense moment, to be sure. Until Nova, the druid, walked over, placed a hand on Scorpion's shoulder, and cast protection from poison, neutralizing the poison instantaneously. Now, at this point, I could have said, oh no, this is magical poison, it's special poison, that spell doesn't work on it. But then that would be defeating the purpose of Nova prepping that spell. It would have robbed her of agency. Meanwhile, the rest of the party, with Pass Without Trace cast on them, muffling their footsteps, were tracking down the Death Dog himself, pursuing him through the corridors of the palace. They came around a corner and looked down a long corridor, seeing him with his back turned, speaking to one of his associates. An easy target. A rogue could just slip right up behind him and put a dagger between his ribs. But my players were smart. They saw this long hallway and this unsuspecting victim, and they got suspicious. And so, a few good investigation rolls later, they realized that this was an ambush set for them. The walls in this corridor were false, were hollow, and hiding behind them were mages and city guard, ready to pounce if they made the mistake of taking the bait. Seeing this, they wisely decided to turn around and try again another day, completely robbing the scenario of any drama. Now, I could have decided that one of these guards rolled extra well on his perception, or even rolled individually for each of the guards. I typically tend to roll for each group of enemies when it comes to checks like perception. I could have sprung the ambush anyway, but that would have robbed the players of their agency. It would have taken their good rolls and their smarts and told them they didn't matter. Instead, my players robbed that entire session of any drama. Except for that one moment before Scorpion realized he was fine. Both of these scenarios illustrate me doing my best, trying my hardest to set up extremely dramatic, tense scenarios, situations for my player to make hard decisions or to get in over their heads. I fully expected one or more players to die that night, but they played it well. They had the right spells, they made the right calls, they rolled well. And so I was forced to dispense with any drama in favor of maintaining the player's agency. And you know what? They still had fun. It was a fun session. They were proud of themselves. It wasn't quite as dramatic as I wanted it to be, but was it a good session? Hell yes. My point is, the time may come where you have to sacrifice your story that you really want to see told for the sake of the player's agency. And that's okay. That's best, because they come and they play this game with you, not so they can hear your story, but so they can tell their own. If you're trying to write a story rather than find out what happens, you're playing this game wrong. Another way that we might favor drama over the player's agency is by not giving adequate foreshadowing. Unlike my previous point, in this one I'm going to say, steal a lot of tricks from the writer's playbook. Foreshadowing is a part of a novel that you definitely can steal for your game. It will add to drama, and it will give your players agency. So it's the best of both worlds. But when you spring a twist on your players and you haven't given them hints or adequate foreshadowing, it can feel unfair to be blindsided with new information, especially if it's something that's negative for the players. And even if you blindside your players with good consequences, it can feel cheap. Foreshadowing is key. Steal a trick from the writers you love, or the movies you love to watch. And here's a key point. Unlike in a novel, you don't have to worry about making your foreshadowing subtle. In fact, you want to make it obvious. You want your players to hear you say something and go, oh, that's foreshadowing. What you don't want is to give the whole game away right away. Anticipation Anticipation is key. You want your players to know that something is coming, but you don't want them to know exactly what it is. An example of this that I used in a game of Dungeon World I ran recently is that the players came up against this magical construct that was kind of a boulder with legs and a mouth, known as an arcane digester. It consumed magic. And as they were in this fight, I gave them hints of a coming threat, which is actually one of the principles of Dungeon World, a fantastic TTRPG that you should check out if you're unfamiliar with it. As the players faced this magical construct that consumed magic, though they weren't quite sure that's what it did at the start of the fight, I gave foreshadowing by having there be 3 lines of runes across it. They slowly lit up, one at a time. In between each row of runes lighting up, a player or two had their turn, but it was foreshadowing something big and bad coming. I even had one of my players say out loud, "We don't want this thing getting all 3 lines of runes powered up." They knew something bad was coming, even though they didn't even know what this thing was capable of yet. This method of providing foreshadowing from your players doesn't have to be extra subtle or complex. Just steal what works from your favorite books and movies. And foreshadowing isn't the only thing that you should steal from the books and films and pieces of media that you love. I actually have an entire video about stealing that you can check out right here. In conclusion, stealing your player's agency is equivalent to stealing their fun. Put your players first, above the drama of the story. It might not be the most dramatic or memorable session, but I'll tell you what, if you rob your players of agency, if you don't let them do what their class abilities or the rules say they can, they will remember that session, and it won't be in a positive light. Don't blindside your players with a twist. Set it up beforehand. Give them foreshadowing. Foreshadow that there's a twist coming, and then blindside them with the content of the twist. Remember, anticipation is key. A way that you can apply this to your game this week is to go back through your notes, review your notes, plans, session prep, and cross off anything that assumes the players will act in a certain way. Don't assume that you, as the GM, know what is going to happen. I actually have another video on how to prep the world and not the story right here. Foreshadow something before it affects your players. You can do this by using rumors, by including something in a book that your players read, if you are so lucky to have players that actually want to do research. If not, you can include foreshadowing in a storyteller's tale or a bard's song that they happen to overhear as they're walking through a civilized settlement. Finally, you could do something like I did with the Arcane Digester. Foreshadow a foe using a powerful ability in combat by a round or 2. Make your players scared. And then, if they're unable to kill that monster or stop it before this happens, you can use it, unleash it in all its dangerous glory, and watch the effect it has on your players' engagement. If you're a game master, I hope this served as a useful reminder of best practices to take when prepping and running your game. If you're a player and this reminds you of your game master, maybe direct them to this video. Tell me why my opinion is wrong in the comments below. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go out for a howling good time. Saved it. Good night, mortals.